Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone. We thank you for tuning in to the Universal Current Show. This is, of course, episode 4. Today is Sunday, October 30th, 2011, and we're just having quite some time here in the universe. I wanted to give definitely a shout out to everyone that is tuned in, Resistance members and guests, to let everyone know that we're definitely going to take this all the way. It's just it makes me really feel happy to be able to broadcast such information in this time when basically from what I've been uncovering, things have been so hampered as far as this kind of content. And of course today's show is how to get out of the body and what's out there. And this is quite an expansive show. In fact, it's actually the beginning of the next part of this Universal Current series, which is we're going to begin to walk through the chakras in order to, show by show, in order to allow a person to actually progress through their chakra gates properly so that they can obtain that connection with themselves. And so this is, like I said, this is an expansive topic. I know there's going to be a lot of people tuning into this because many people have had the question about how to get out of the body, can you get out of the body, and then for those that haven't thought that next step, what's really out there? The first thing I definitely would say with all of that is that this isn't a depth show from this point because, of course, if everyone can get out of their body all the time, then they would just be doing it. And so first it's important for us to define out of the body. The definition of out-of-body experience is not only feeling like you're outside of the body, but it also includes an elevated visual perspective or another perspective in which you're able to witness yourself or witness something that was directly related to you in the physical realm and your ascent from it, or just waiting around in the room with your body there, but your spirit outside of the body. So we have to make sure that that gets clarified very well, because some people confuse dreaming for out-of-body experience, and we've done enough coverage on dreaming so people can really get deep to understand the levels of the dream. But out of the body is an actual ability that either you have or you don't, and it's when you can literally come out of your body and you see your body there and you begin to move into the next spatial. So we'll kind of take it from here just to understand that there is an extreme urgency. The reason why this kind of information is coming out and the reason why things are not the same and everything is changing, because we're reaching that 0 point field. And it's 100% happening. So the main thing that I can do for you is I can just give you more information and more essence of exactly what's going on, but it still takes you personally to decide whether or not that's something that you believe in or not. All I would do is encourage people to understand that you need to be active at figuring out what's going on here in this particular time, because it is your soul. And soul does have a lot to do with personal growth and you taking care of it. So it's not someone else's responsibility to take care of your spiritual situation. And that brings us into the other part of what I want to explain here really quick in the beginning of the show, which is we have to understand that the people who are aware of this kind of information have already given up in explaining it to the masses at large. For the simple fact that, as you notice the tune of the world today, when anything is given to this world from higher states of consciousness, they have a tendency to take it and then make a weapon out of it. So in the case of Nikola Tesla, who said himself that he had come from Venus and that he had bought this knowledge of how to revolutionize our energy situation, and they utilized that same knowledge to actually make a plasma cannon to shoot down many of the ships that were parked out into space. So it shows there that when you bring the knowledge, at times in this environment in particular, it has a tendency to be used in a very negative way. And I will show once again how this happens. If you notice, many people are now saying, well, it's the computers. The computers have become a problem because now everyone is on the computer. And then so thus if we have computers, so the computers are destroying everything and the Borgs are destroying everything. But the interesting part about this is that it's not the computers that are destroying anything. It's what we're doing with the computers that's destroying everything. It's pinning people up in offices and jobs and making them work commerce on the internet, etc. So using the computer to do that rather than building machines that would do the labor while we learn. Notice what I said, not do the labor while we chill back out and have a good time. No, do the labor, the physical labor, while we learn and take our society and our race and our species into a quantum level of our existence. We could be doing that with the machines. So still understand that much of what we're going to talk about today is very similar to that on why it has not got to you. People have utilized it to make it a weapon or to make it another form of to fulfill their desires. And thus, the lid has been kept on it because of the nature of not only what can happen to you, but what can also happen to others because of you while you're in that realm, out of the body. At this point, it is officially confirmed that we have left the age of Pisces. There are now no more secrets, meaning what went on in Crete with or the serpents, there's no more secrets. If you understand the beginning of your Bible, the serpent is somehow in conjunction with the woman. They tend to basically yoke these two entities together, and they show you that the serpent means knowledge, or he brought the knowledge of what to eat the tree. Because remember, before the command was given, do not touch the tree, and then supposedly the serpent moves in and says, well, actually, you can eat that tree. But people never ask, if they're going to believe in this story at all, why was Eve, quote unquote, not scared of the serpent? Like, why did she see this thing and like run? Because whatever this is trying to talk to me, it's foreign than the other beings that I've been dealing with so far. This is because they weren't foreign. The serpent was not foreign. It looked like it was from the same family as the angels, because all these angels, all these wise men, all these people were all connected to the serpent families. This is why it keeps popping up in history everywhere. People like David Icke can't bring the next level of knowledge, which is understanding if anything is around us and has that close of relationship to us, i.e. like a dog, then there's an origin or a story in the stars that shows us how we got there with this other living being. So if a person does not want to talk about that, let that be their prerogative. But they'll go and talk about, of course, everything else on TV and on the radio and on the news and on the movies. But do not make it something that you hold yourself back from, which is truth. Which brings me to the next point. Why would we need to have our cultural knowledge? Even if it was bad, why would we need to have it? Because what we just saw was the religion Christianity and all the derivatives of that, including Islam, slid underneath people's current culture, from where they were from Poland, where they were from Africa, where they were from Canada, or those areas and what they were called in. They had another religion basically inserted underneath them, locking them out of their culture. So thus, the person latched onto a new culture, and that culture may have benefited them. However, the question is, why would it be important to have your cultural knowledge, whether it was good or bad? Because we're at least 3 generations away from when that happened, to the great-great-great-grandmother, when they first started to accept another culture. It's because of something that takes place underneath the microscope, which is that an organism, like a plant organism, has to know what it was before in order so it can know what it is to become. It needs roots. That's a plant. So this should be the tune of today's show, is the roots. Like, what happened, what's going on. We've moved beyond it, definitely, but where have we really gone? We will need that other half in order to become complete. It's not just a physical person. A lot of people are running around the dimension looking for a physical external half. This is because, as they told you in the Garden of Eden, the original androgynon was they removed a rib from it. And if you touch your rib right now, you'll see how sensitive your rib is. In fact, for tattoos, the rib area is the most sensitive area. It has the most essence of who you are, and it's delicate. So if your rib is removed, if someone's ever had their rib cracked or even fractured, they know the pain that's associated with it. But if your rib is removed, it means that you are now not complete. You need that. So what happened with man is what was removed, or the androgynon, because now when I say man, I'm talking about man and woman. What happened to the androgynon was there was a piece removed that it needed, and unless it had that, it could never be complete. So for a man, it's everything that makes a woman, as far as being able to take care of things, nurture things, grounded, will persevere, etc. All the traits of the woman, the man is missing. And all the traits of the man, the woman is missing. This is what the rib signifies. So what this actually equals is this equals the person runs around the dimension looking for that, but on an external level. So what this really becomes is a situation, if you don't understand logistically where we've been placed. This dimension is very similar to a mirror. That the actual you, because this part has been removed, the actual you is located on the other side of the mirror. The physically, spiritually powerful individual. Because if that individual was here, then you would not be acting like you're acting right now. Like you would be acting like, let's see, who's a good example? You could take any one of your stars and actors that every single day they have something to do. Every single moment they're at some party, some gala, some shooting some movie, doing something, and it's like, well, where are they getting all this energy from? Themselves. So I'm going to let you in on the biggest secret that I've found out so far, but judging on the rate of how things are going, by next week, there'll be another secret. What happened here on this planet was there has been successions of aristocracies rising and falling. We have this all in our history book. That at one time there's a whole group of people ruling, and then comes a time where another nation strengthens itself and goes into combat and wins. So whatever society you find yourself under is a product of the last winner of the major war. It's easy to say it like that because the world has already been in multiple wars. And it just so happens that the current leaders of this world and their lineage have never been equipped to handle this kind of population, this many souls. This is why there was a call for a new world order, because a new world order is built to manage more people. That's why they cannot stay with the old world order, because there's too many people to adhere to that system, so they need to develop a new one. Now, why would they need to develop a new one? Well, because at any point where everyone decides to occupy and everything gets out of control, then there's complete chaos. Once there's complete chaos, if there's nothing to bring chaos back in order, everyone kills each other basically, and famine spreads across the land. And basically everything that everyone is complaining about now happening would happen if the system just up and stopped running for a moment. People are not thinking now. They're only playing checkers. They're not thinking several moves ahead, like, let's plan here. What are we about to do? So still understand, anyone that takes on the responsibility to manage billions of souls has taken upon themselves an extreme burden. And sometimes if they crack under that burden, don't be surprised. You watch your politicians and people crack under the burden of not being able to make all of their promises because they're let in on other things when they get to that position. But the reality becomes for us is, well, while this stuff is taking place in the society, then what can I do? How do I connect? You connect as the highest being if you can become whole. But as long as you're in pieces, then that's what the aristocracy was developed for, is some people were in worse pieces. Some people were what they call an imperfect pentagram. It's if you understand the dodecahedron nature of the earth, then you can understand the dodecahedron nature of the field that's around the body. And then you can understand the body in its symbolism and phi, which is the pentagram. And then you can look at the body and you can see on a spiritual level where a person, just like you see those sides, is missing one of the pieces, basically, one of the arcs, as they call it, of the pentagram. And this is causing their auric field to spin completely out of balance. And it's so slow that they cannot activate their chakra center so that they can break out of what is called squaring the circle. You cannot square a circle, the little geometry. You cannot square a circle with a square. You have to do it with what we call a pentagon. So this is how the geometry plays into it, because we know now 100% that the body was built to limit the spiritual senses, people. Like, look at what we know, the potential of what's happening outside of the body. So when we're in the body and we cannot exercise that potential, it's because the body is governed. It's under a government. Why these people still are continuing to figure out who they're going to keep electing? They need to figure out how they're not going to elect anymore at all. Because when you elect a Ron Paul or whatever, you elect everyone that is in that cabinet. So people have to understand this is a deeper level of things, and you need to be awake with every decision that you're making, watching the ripple effect. You have to see the ripple effect of the decision you're making and who's involved. That's what it means to be spiritually active and awake. And what I'm talking about now is some of the preliminaries to understanding this out-of-body stuff. Because I can definitely give you the techniques and the procedure on how to come out of the body. Whether you could come out of the body and what you see there is going to be wholly upon whether you follow the proper directions. Like I said, this is a depth conversation, so it's nothing to be played with out there. And where is out there? In your own consciousness. Your consciousness needs to be in the right state before you're going to go into it. And this is why. Most people just came recently off of the fear God concept. This is the Bible. God is tearing everything up. Like, again, God kills more people in the Old Testament. I think it was like 46,000 or 4 million, some high number. And the devil kills like 3 people. But then God goes further and says, good and evil, I do all these things. Meaning that he's saying that he's the devil. So I guess he's basically killed everything. So this kind of attitude was to put fear into people, as they say in many times in the Old Testament. Let us go put fear in them. And they feared them. So there's nothing but fear going on there. But here's something very interesting that people looked over. If in the Bible it says, did I tell you the truth? Ye are gods. And it says it at least twice. But then it says you should fear God. Is it not telling you to fear yourself? On a subconscious level, because of how the mind works, it just registered it says you're God, because the person latches a hold of that fast. When they read that scripture, it never leaves them. For the ones who read the Bible and they read, did I tell you the truth? Ye are God. At that point, they end it right there and they go in the ego. I told you I was God, but they never forget that moment. But for some reason, they forget it when they say, ye shall fear God. And then all of a sudden, they basically start to fear themselves. So, this is why we have not been able to access any of the history of our world, because it has been put to us as in a fearful way, as a nightmare. And evil and monsters and fires and screaming and gnashing of teeth. It has been put to us in that way, so we're like, okay, I don't even want to go in there. Where else can I go? But according to the attainments of a real spiritual person, a person that becomes wholly a spiritual person, the attainment is to have no limitation. That the city is there's no place that you cannot be. So once you say, I can't go there, then that means you cannot obtain this high state of spiritual consciousness. So basically, the whole body is built on like a domino effect. That one wrong idea seated in the right place can topple us down. And that's why a big part of the knowledge it's just the 13, or what they call outside of death, which is 12 disciples and one ruling over 12, the Jesus concept. The biggest secret that they really had, that they were keeping, was this ability of how to transcend death by basically making your flesh die daily. Now, they say in the book, the flesh dies daily. So let's look a little bit more deeper into the flesh. The moon acts on the flesh, not the spirit. Sometimes people are confused. They think that the moon is affecting their spiritual consciousness. But it's actually acting on their flesh in the instinctual nature of the flesh. Because the spirits inside of our bodies come from many different stars. The flesh is what is actually getting stimulated, and then it sends suggestions to the spirit. So when they say the body steers the soul towards sin, this is, of course, in this Bible, what they're saying is that the flesh has an inclination towards sin, or the moon, because that is the name for the moon, sin. So what actually happens is that we have to realize that fluid and energy inside of this physical body actually corresponds to timing on the moon, when it can be risen and when it sits dormant. And this was the whole knowledge of the difference between a full moon, which anyone that's halfway activated and taking a little bit of Ethereum gold at this point, you can feel during the moon cycle that you're more soluble, that there is a higher magnetic charge going through your body. You may not know what to do with it yet, but this is to show clearly that when the moon starts to act on the flesh, it has an effect, a very powerful effect. So we could take it from here and understand the preliminary conditioning of out-of-the-body travel. The first thing you need to practice is astral hygiene. But even before we can get into that, we want to talk about alkaline levels. This is so that you don't end up either not out of the body at all, because remember, out of the body is a technique. To do it, it's necessary that you actually have the proper levels or pH going on. This has nothing to do with your consciousness, whether you can get out of the body or not, as far as whether you're a good person or a bad person. Because some people ask, well, I don't think that those people that really do negative magic and things like that I know are getting out of the body are eating good food and things like that. You're right, they're not. There's other ways. But it's not about the other ways, it's about the proper way. So the proper way is to make sure your vehicle is tight. So this is the same thing that you have to do when you're about to take a long trip. You go outside, you take a look at the car. You kick the tires, you check under the hood, you check the oil and everything like that, because you're about to go in a spaceship. So have you ever seen them just take spaceships off all the time? And, they land it, and then they, all right, I'll be out in a minute. We're going to take off in a moment. No, there's like this whole preparation phase because of how fast you're going. All these different integers. So that's why they call it a depth knowledge, because you have to really, really be on top of it. You can't handle it the same way you at times may handle your life with letting people just do whatever they want to, and there's no real system there of order, etc., and it's just like a free-for-all. You cannot do the free-for-all in the out-of-body. Most of the time, you just can't get in there. But because of some of the techniques that are being revealed today, people will have an opportunity to get into stages of it, because that's the techniques we're going to talk about, is how there's stages to coming out of the body. And so that should allow somewhat of a training curve to go on, because really the first instinct within coming out of the body is the person starts to feel themselves come out, and then they jerk and they get scared for a moment, basically, that it's actually happening, and then they slam kind of back into their body. So we're going to talk about how to get through that. But again, this astral hygiene has to be done, but the alkaline levels are the most important to make sure you end up on a high frequency. We talked about how to bring up alkaline levels several times. People understand that the Shilajit, the gene builders build up the proper current, adding curcumin and turmeric and curry into your diet All of these are current, are allowing you to helping you to insulate the current, because we're talking about Kundalini now. And the reason also why I'm doing this is because I feel like the people that are on this line, which are still not very many, have to be equipped for what's really coming, and that's my only position here. The reality becomes this thing is so crazy, I just had to, at one point, back down off of what I wouldn't say and just say, look, it's not my position to whether I tell them or not tell them. It's really my position to have integrity, which is if anyone counts on you to do something, then do it, no matter what you see and no matter what you know. And so I'm telling you what I see and what I know. Kundalini is related to the being they've been calling Cthulhu. That's why it is the same word. And they are so scared of it. And when I'm saying when I'm saying they, I'm talking about the current aristocracy who doesn't know how to run things. They're so scared of it. Everything they put on it was like, oh my goodness, it's a monster. It will tear everything up. Because they're simply giving the warning about when you raise Kundalini from the base of your spine, oh my, nothing is the same again. And you have to be on balance. In the event that you're not on balance, you will be destroyed. It's the point of it's no longer playing around time. But because the urgency of what's taking place in our reality and the need to send more activated beings into the reality in order to get the message to many of the loved ones who are yet to wake up from their dream, then this is necessary. It's important to understand that the actual status of humanity is dead but dreaming. And in this dream, they have forgotten who they are. This is what the deep text, not just in the Necronomicon, not just the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but also the Tibetan Book of the Dead, talk about there's an extreme forgetfulness within the gods. Now, we just pointed out in the Bible, who are the gods? The God is man. So God is often to forget. Who are they talking about? They're talking about us. We are here in this reality and have totally forgotten who we really are. So now we remember. This means more members, more family. So what happens here is that the alkaline levels, when high, actually allow you to get into the state that we're going to be talking about, which is about the master's pose. Let me make sure I put a note here to remember to close this with the master's pose. But the master's pose is a technique in which allows you to get out of the body after going through several stages of your own consciousness. And I'm going to talk about this at the end of the show today. But since I mentioned it, I wanted to give a little hint about it. And but the alkaline levels become important for the master's pose because there's a certain thing that you start to feel while you're using the master pose technique. And that is caused by having high alkaline levels. And so, if for some reason the stomach is not basically empty or just has juice or something like that in it and the alkaline levels are high, then all of what goes on with the master's pose is not applicable, like nothing will really happen. But I will say that there are other ways, but the proper way is what needs to be taught here. Out of the body mastering does have the ability for a person to walk into a place, maybe a bathroom stall, sit there, and then pull their spirit out of their body, and then walk back into that place as a spirit. It has that ability. You will also witness people there when you do that, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. We'll talk now about astral hygiene. What astral hygiene is about is that even before, if you look in Islam, there's this cleaning that has to be done with your hands and behind your ear and your hair. And some people do it when they're about to do ayahuasca. They do it with sage. They blow the sage over themselves. This is astral hygiene. And the reason why this is done and certain things are used is because there are shells, which is the actual term used for the beings that do attempt to latch onto us. Maybe because of a song we listen to, maybe because of an idea that we're thinking about, or maybe because of a person that's thinking about us that we've linked to. It actually produces a shell or a clasp around the actual auric field. And so what this, like the sage does, and what the salt water or salt does, or what just cleansing, taking the time to cleanse the head, or what they call wudu. You can look up the wudu and see all of the techniques. They clean the soul, the feet, etc. Taking the time to actually do that makes you clean to enter into the dimension basically without the lag of whatever it is you've latched on. So if we're going to use this pentagram or dodecahedron shape as an example, when a shell latches onto the dodecahedron, it latches on to a certain point. Once that happens, the dodecahedron, which is always spinning, starts to spin out, and it spins like it's wobbled. It's very important, people, to understand the result of not being balanced is a wobble. When you wobble, you cannot go fast. It's just like a tire that already is flattened or has a puncture in it, and it's created a large contusion on it. If you try to really go fast on that thing, it's not gonna happen. And so that's the only situation that's going on with our higher levels of activation, is our field is not spinning correctly, because once it starts to spin correctly, it actually breaks off the shield of some can call them protection. They're almost like an egg, but some can also call them hindrance if you start to bump up against them. But it starts to crack these shields off until you actually get to your complete self. And that's the finishing of the out-of-body technique, because there are people who can naturally come out of the body. They don't need to they just wake up and all of a sudden, or look, and all of a sudden they're floating out of their body. But they still are stuck at a certain point of figuring out, well, what do I do now? So remember, getting out of the body is not the end-all, finish-all. It's like it's a blank space unless the person understands the projection techniques, and also depending upon where they've come out of the body. So we're going to walk through all of this. So the astral hygiene actually gets you ready so that your frequency stays high, because the alkaline inside is an internal frequency. The external, or they call it ritualistic cleansing, is actually the external frequency of the person. It's making the motors work. Like, go ahead and put that around you, and then the smoke is there. It's all external. So what it's doing is bringing up the frequency of the environment. And it was funny, because I think of one of these ancient books, it talks about that Solomon had this special mixture of stacked gall and myrrh and a couple other things. And this was what they burned before they basically, when they went into a new area, they would burn this, because for some reason the higher frequencies could not go into just regular smelling stuff. And that makes perfect sense anyway, because if a bathroom is all dank and it smells like crap and pee, you can't expect a high frequency being to be in there. So it's the same thing with the body. If the body is not clean and the person's got a cheeseburger in their stomach, you're not going nowhere. And you don't want to go anywhere. So, astral hygiene, people. With Kundalini, it's always known that to rise Kundalini, there's a musk. And I'm in Costa Rica, so there's not much of the oil type stuff here. But you could go to like your local Whole Foods or whatever, and you could start smelling through some of those musks, because the musks are actually what bring up the Kundalini from its base position. So we'll get a little bit into the beginning of awakening the Kundalini. But the smell is important. Kundalini is directly tied to the nose, the first chakra that it needs to rise from. So it becomes very important that a person actually has that in conjunction with their meditation of raising this energy. The reason why we're talking about raising this energy now in conjunction with this out-of-the-body show is because in many cases, if you have an active spiritual vehicle, when you come out of the body, there is so much access and information for you to complete many of those levels or gates. Right then, it's better to do it this way, to have all this knowledge before you go into your preparation. This is something that you should prepare for. It's not something that you should just, okay, I'm going to go and get musk, and I'm going to lay down tonight, and it's something that you have to really, for one moment in your life, say, I'm going to really focus on this, and I'm not going to do this the same way that I do everything else, which is just, I want to try it, see if it works, and if it doesn't, I'm going to the next thing. There's no next thing. That's what they were realizing about Kundalini, is that it was the end-all, finish-all for anything that needed to be accomplished on this dimension. So most didn't even want to get Kundalini because they just wanted to stay here, after seeing what was happening to other individuals who awake Kundalini, which was that some of them disappear. There's the ability to completely disintegrate your whole flesh field. So they call it the Shroud of Turin. So the reality is that, but then what happens so they say Jesus he leaves the planet, but then 3 or 4 days later, he's back again. In what form, though? And how is this accomplished? The reason that they still uphold the Jesus story within Masonic lodges, Illuminati, and all these other levels is not for the reason most people are explaining, because they just want the beginning initiates to come in. No, they don't even want initiates to come in. The real reason why they hold the Jesus story, because it is actually it's deep symbolism behind how to raise the Kundalini, because Jesus himself is Kundalini. Christ is Kundalini. But they don't look at it from the story and a man. Those are children who look at it that way. And that's how a doctrine is put together. It has to have stories for children, stories for adults, and then stories for old people. And that completes a doctrine. So most people are still on the kid terminology of the Bible, not the adept terminology of what roles these characters are playing. So thus, the whole thing goes to waste, unless someone can come and reinterpret it like we're doing now. So understand this is spiritual. This is now spiritual alchemy. This is knowing how much of something you really need. This what I'm going to be explaining now. You need to understand how much of this you really need as an adept in order to get yourself into the next level. And this is, again, when you use that term adept, you're using that term in the sense that it's a person that is responsible for what they do. And they understand that everything they do creates a ripple effect. They say one of the major things about coming out of the body is working on silence, having the ability to not make a lot of ripple and a lot of static and chaos. And so that's about the balance. Maintaining the balance allows you easily to have transitioning between this dimension and the others. What I mean by the others is the human is a hyperdimensional being. We have several vehicles, i.e. biorhythm. Our biorhythm connects us to several vehicles that we have access to once we get out of this vehicle. We talked about that the body was in fact shaped like a phi or in the pentagram, but there is an exit point to all of that geometry. And that was the power within the knowledge. Now, the original name of the pentagram is R, which is A-R, which just gives us R. Now, it has a depth nature to it. It's rated R. So when you look at the words AR, you get the words aristocracy, you get the words art, you get the words architecture, you get the words argos and armor. Why do all these words start with AR? Because they're all related to the individuals who understood the knowledge about the pentagram completely. That knowledge was known to come from the stars, because everyone here that was already in pentagram bodies didn't even know about it. They didn't even know they were in pentagram bodies, just like right now. How many people know they're in pentagram bodies? Leonardo da Vinci figured it all out for them, showed them mathematics. They did the structure of the face, and they did the circumference of the bones, and they measured everything on the phi and showed it very clear there that it was all related. So, from that point, does that just mean, okay, great, you figured that out, we're going to go home now? Or does that mean that we are, you see, there's a million questions that should have came after they figured this out about the body, which was, well, is this the only shape? Are we limited to this? How did we get in this? Etc. And then that's when the answers, because many people have asked those questions, but many of the answers that would have came out would be like, well, the pentagram, again, is a pin. It holds things in. It keeps things contained, especially when they're learning how to utilize their energy. And they cannot get out until they learn how. So we talked about, again, also that Earth is more or less like a ship. It is a ship where the environment that produces the oxygen that the beings need to live is already being produced. So it's just like the ships that they talk about that they wanted to take to space and they wanted to have the flora and the fauna be able to take care of them while they were out there, producing oxygen, producing food, etc. And so our reality, our actual Earth is very similar to that. It's a very large ship. because it's moving through space. So some people always think of ship and they think of spaceships with controls, even though we definitely have some controls. But the reality is that it's, in the old days, they looked at anything that was going through the cosmos or through the womb of the Great Mother was a ship. And so we have to start to look at things a different kind of way. It gives us a better perspective. And then that's a big part of out of the body. Because you notice what they say, when you come out of the body, you look at yourself. This is because you have to begin to practice looking at things from another perspective. Mainly from the top, like you're standing on the top of it and you're looking down on it. So the first aristocracy that came to rule this world were very clear about who was first here, and that's, just facts. So that began with actually the white man and the black man. Or white woman and the black woman. And people are going to be like, okay, now you've gone too far. I bet you can't prove that, Sevan. You've overstepped the line. We were first. I love it because everyone, they love to do the who was first. And I now can actually blow minds and show you it happened at the same time. It happened at the same time with the beings we now call Dravidians. You trace them all the way back. They were Ethiopians or Etherians. They took fleshly bodies first. And when they took those fleshly bodies, if you notice, their face was as black as coal. But their hair was as straight as light. And so thus, if you understand anything about the differences between the root races, right there, it's there. It's in the hair and in the skin color. And both are there in their extremes. The mother or the queen of this world, which is known as Cassiopeia. So when you go later down the line with the genealogy of Cassiopeia, and we still have to get deeper into these names. There are deeper names. But when you go down the line, and this still does have to do with out of the body, you find that Cassiopeia's husband, Cephas, had a daughter named Andromeda. They had a daughter, and that daughter was named Andromeda. Now, these are now Greek names, so it's easy for us to look at it and be like, okay, well, wait a minute, this is crazy. I don't think anything the Greeks did are true, etc., blah, blah, blah. But the word is andro, which comes from androgynous, meaning it was collected. So whatever this daughter was, it was an androgynon. And she had a son named Perseus. Now, it's important for us to now catch the tail here because most people that are anywhere near halfway down the rabbit hole definitely are familiar with Perseus and the Argonauts, or the ones who actually were looking, or Jason the Argonauts and Perseus, the ones who were actually looking for the golden fleece, etc., the ones who were looking for the way out of the monstrous land, etc. So basically, what we find is that there is a connection here with not only physical ancestors, but they still live on through trees. That probably 100% is the connection, they call it the missing link, that people are looking for at times with where are the ancestors? Where are the people? I believe 100% that they live through very large trees. So it becomes important for us to see, well, somebody say, okay, so let's clarify that. So somebody will say, well, how do you figure? It's because certain trees, when ingested, actually give you the conscious state of the ancestor. Ayahuasca does it. It actually links you in with a whole link of Mayans, Tikal, all sorts of beings that have known about or are these trees, not known about, but are these trees. And then the consciousness goes way beyond what CNN is talking about. It ends for you there. And that's why some people are like, well, what do I do? It's what you want to do. When you're ready for it to end for you, enough knowledge is already passed across within certain parts of last episode that lets you know what you need to do. It's still about what state of mind you're in. Now, here's another thing that I wanted to point out. It's about those who agree to take the burden. Because some people are carrying all the burden while the other people are sitting back just looking like, I got over. It's like, what is that? Tom Huckleberry Finn or Tom Tom Sawyer, yeah, he makes everyone paint the fence. And then he's sitting back like, look, I conned them all into painting the fence. The reality becomes, don't think if you're not doing any work or contributing or helping that you've gotten over and someone can actually do it for you. There will be no reward for you. That's how it works, because those who do the work, carry the burden, they at least benefit from the strength that is gained while they're actually doing it, while the other ones remain weak and watching. So it's important to never see if you didn't have to do something or you didn't have to give anything, etc., as your benefit. It's not. You won't receive any reward. That's why we've been given things, so that we can plant them. And then we can plant them in good soil so that they mature and grow, and then we can eat off of them later on. That's how it works. Everything here is the garden. It's just there has been a fall in the garden, because they say, well, where was the garden in Eden anyway? It was in Ethiopia. It was there because the 4 rivers that they talk about crossed there. But now we're outside the garden. Ethiopia is desolate right now, and the areas that probably contain the garden you can't get to. And everyone has fled from that area. They make Ethiopia the most poorest country in the world. That's where anyone here in Ethiopia, you're talking about those people that are poor with the flies on their face? That's what they did to consciousness from where we came from. You see? People can just think about that long enough to understand what this society has for you. But in negation, we're able to understand why it's doing this. It's doing this to drive us home. So we'll keep going. Let's see here. I do actually have some notes. All right. We'll go into this Universe B and more of this out-of-body stuff. So what I've discovered, and I'm pulling more geometry as I can, is I started noticing with this pentagram, which is known now as the aura, which is still the same word. It's just turned back on itself to make sure that you understand that no matter where you turn it, it's actually going to mean the same thing. So it's aura now. The ones who carry this aura sign is what I've been tracking down, because the whole reality is definitely formed by it. And I started to get into these 2 planets that are directly adjacent to us. Now, how I would look at this, because people are like, well, I thought you said on last show that none of that stuff really exists out there. It's like this. Inside of your Innerverse, each organ is a planet. Then, when you're tesseracted or turned inside out, you project your planet in front of you. And your constellations, your stars, your everything, your inner working, you project it. So when you see out and see the stars, the reason why another person sees that too is because they have that same makeup. So what it becomes important to realize is that, well, what planets are closest to us and what are they doing? So we know Mars is on one side, Venus is on the other. And we've had so many stories about what's going on Mars and what's going on in Venus that it's clear that something's going on. But today we're just going to talk about Venus. Because Venus, throughout history, and has gotten more attention, even by myself, than even the God of the Bible. Because the Venus plays the fecundating component for all of the masculine beings. Meaning that even they say Yahweh, for those who love to believe in the Bible, they know Yahweh or in YHVH is the God of the Old Testament. It says Yahweh had his Asherah. Asherah is Venus. It says that blah, blah, blah had Isis. Isis is Venus. It says that blah, blah, blah in the mystery, she's Hecate. Hecate is Venus. So when you keep looking at the same thing being said over again, are we just going to just discard it, throw it in the trash, and just say there's nothing to this, or is there a relation? So look deeper. We find out Venus, sure enough, is tracing this pentagram out in the sky as if it's totally related to the pentagram situation. Start looking at the fruits and things of that nature. The fruit's got the pentagram inside of it. Cut the apple in half. The apple has 5 seeds inside of it. Then it starts to sync up weird because I'm like, well, why did Eve have the apple in the garden and she bit out of it? What does that mean? Was that the fruit on the tree? You should not eat the fruits? So what is actually happening? And then we get more information with the rabbit hole. Oh, okay, well, the rabbit hole is Venus because she's the fertility goddess. It's the spring. So we go a little bit further. We find out the rabbit hole is not even just the fertility goddess, but also the pentagram, because the pentagram was used in magic and called the door or the hole. And then we go a little bit further and we find out that the pentagram actually equals phi, and phi makes rectangles, which are golden doors. Then we go a little further and we find out that the pyramids were called in the ancient language of the Chinese, were called golden houses. Then we find everything that's surrounded by the shape to be golden, means golden rectangles and everything. But here's what the extra kicker was. When you take 72, which is the actual, when you take 72 degrees and you times it by 5, you get 360. Proving that just as you draw a star as a two-dimensional figure, on another dimension it actually equals a sphere. It equals 360 degrees, or what we call a circle. So this is the close relationship with this planet. And for some that were demonized, it was called the light bearer. It would bring some revelation to them. So many people confused that, started worshiping the planet. Anything they started to confuse, they started to worship. When you're worshiping, you're not understanding. You're just worshiping. So what happened is that the reason why they called it the light bearer is because it was going to bring light to a certain situation. Something that was in darkness. Basically something that no one knew. As it says, I am Isis, I am Venus, no mortal has lifted my veil, meaning no one that is of the land of the living, the ones who actually are mortals, knows about what goes on over here. People need to really, really listen to this message today. That's why people don't know about what's going on the other side. And that's why when you have a book like the Necronomicon, or you have a book like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and you have something like that, but that seems scary to us. We're like, oh my goodness, not these evil books of death. Well, why do you think that these books were so important to these people who had all this high level of knowledge? Because the Necronomicon came from Ethiopia. It stems all the way back from Samaria, and the ones that were in Samaria, which they're like, oh, we don't know where they came from. I know where they came from. But what was so important for, why would they have this? It's because we all die. They weren't looking at it like the same way we look at it. We look at, oh my goodness, stay away from the book of death. They were looking like, where's the book of death? Because I just saw my uncle die. Maybe there's something in there that will tell us about more of what's going on. Now, I will tell you, most of the conditions of most of these books now is the same condition as the Bible is. But you can grasp you can skim off the top if you have enough spiritual knowledge, and I'm just going to do that for you to save you the grief of reading through the demonization and darkness and fear level of how spirituality is always presented to us. Spirituality is always presented to humanity as containing very evil components. Even just recently with the advent of the reptilian. Or the reptilian knowledge. So what happens is that if we're going to keep doing this, as humanity is already showing it's going in the wrong direction. And I believe it's going in the wrong direction because it keeps doing this. It keeps looking at every single thing as its enemy. And that's why we learn negation. Because negation allows you, when you get out of the body, that anything you see, you're not scared of it because you don't see yourself as anything different. So thus, you actually don't see anything as different. It's a whole different perspective. It's like you're outside looking in you. That's the only way that I can really explain it. It's like you have an ambient, omnipresent type view because of your status of who you actually are, which is yourself now, not who they want you to be. Now notice the words that are being used. Who you are now. All of it is embedded in the language, and this is in the ancient languages. This is not just within English. It's all there, but we've now come to a point in our history, in our time span, where we're figuring it out again because we forgot it. So understand why it was forgotten is because dirt was thrown over it. There was no intention for a while of identifying people with where they came from. as Israel and Samaria and these lands who are now controlled, have always been controlled up to a certain point by Turks. When the original peoples of those lands moved out, the Turks took control. Those are not Egyptians in Egypt. Those are not Israelites in Israel. Those are not in many countries the people who were originally there. What you have there is the people who adapted their religions and customs. So when you look into Israel, you get the very unique story about, well, how did all this knowledge get off track? And it got off track with the story in the Bible talking about that Jacob wrestled the angel Israel and won. And then it says in the book that he took the name of this angel. What it's all saying is that when they left out of Kemet with the knowledge, they went and set up in Canaan. These are still melanin dominant individuals. The same thing. But when people came and said, well, where did this knowledge come from? They said it came from us. They never gave it credit back to where it was originally from. So that started a whole cataclysm and a whole problem. I've definitely experienced. So to further the out-of-body technique, we now get into the master's goal. We got about 25 more minutes within the call. And we're going to talk about now these techniques, exactly how to get the transformation happening. Now remember next show is actually going to be about root chakra. We're going to start from the root chakra. We're going to actually go up there, talk about everything leading to that system, and how to your consciousness out of that seat. You'll notice that sometimes when you're in your consciousness, that's higher than your root chakra. You will often want to stay there. You often have to remind yourself that there is continuous higher level of consciousness as you continue to see your field start to pull in more things as it begins to power up. So the breathing course is a major part of getting out of the body the proper way. The crystals are a major part of getting yourself out of the body the proper way. If you don't have anything, you still always have the breathing. So we'll first talk about some of the lighter ways. The lighter ways are if you take. Actually, you know what? I just have to go right into the master's pose because it's really the only thing that's going to show a person literally that they can actually get out of their body. So how the master's pose works is the reason why it was developed is because out of the body is often accompanied with a person actually fainting or falling out. So many have tried to get out of the body all the time by laying down, and they find it to be very difficult because the actual position of the body is not, when laying down, calibrated to really get out of the body. There's an easier position. As some people know that laying on the right side and laying on the left side, they do different things. So what happens is that the master's pose was developed in order to defeat all of the problems with when you're standing up or laying down. Standing up, of course, is the fastest way to get out of your consciousness, out of this form of consciousness, is by standing up and doing the technique. However, the problem is if you're standing up and there's no one there to catch you, you fall down and it's dead weight, so you can get hurt. So this also becomes the main reason why even sitting in the chair, a person's like, well, I can't go into I can't pass out here because if I do, then I'll fall on the floor. So this actually keeps a person from crossing over through the door that appears when you actually have made yourself, for better lack of words, go into an altered state of consciousness. So we'll talk about this. And this is a technique that was I've only heard it talked about in some of the books that were delivered from the Tibetans to actually the Nazis as a way to allow them to get out of their body immediately. So if someone's wondering, well, where did this information actually come from? The master's pose itself is a known pose, but all the details, I guess you can Google it, I haven't Googled it before, but all the details of how it really came about and how it was found out to work came from the Tibetans. So what it is that you position yourself in front of something so you're actually on your knees. The master's pose actually starts with a person on their knees, but with their back erect. So this is similar to you're standing up, but you're on your knees, but your back is straight up. There's no bending down. And it's important because remember, when you're doing your breathing technique, you stand straight up and then you turn your feet straight so they're not cocked at an angle. And this opens up the coccyx or tail in the center of your back. So it's the same thing when you're in the master's pose on your knees. You have to actually keep your back straight because this allows the fluid to go up and down. Now, the reason why this pose is the most powerful, because if you position yourself in front of a bed or something, when you pass out or when you lose consciousness, you will just fall forward. And sometimes when you already feel yourself about to lose consciousness, you can actually push yourself, fall forward yourself. And sometimes you could still catch it. But most of the time you need to stay straight until you actually begin to, I'm going to do a video on this because I know some people are like, well, I don't understand what you're really saying. But if you're on your knees and you're in front of the bed and your back is straight, when your knees are touching the ground, you now have a contact. And the reason why that contact is the most powerful, it's even more powerful than your feet, because there's water in your knees. And this allows a certain type of vibration to take place and to transcend back up through the base of your spine. So as you're there, you put your hands down to the side, and so you're in front of the bed. And then you start taking air into your whole body breathing. Basically, you go into your whole body breathing. And everyone at this point should be familiar with the whole body breathing techniques. Now, I will tell you the reason why the master's pose works, because in listening to it, you're like, well, how is that going to work? One, it removes the fear of what happens if I pass out. Which is like, am I going to get hurt when I fall? You will fall onto the bed, you'll have no problem. The second thing is, some say you should not hold your breath for a long time. I'm here to tell you, the body is developed in a way that if you oxygenate it, remember, whole body breathing is the technique of you're doing breathing into your stomach. You see your stomach going out and in and out and in. And then once you get through several cycles of that, which you'll feel in the master's pose, once you get through several cycles of that, you will feel this, like a lightheadedness. Remember, because you've taken all these breaths, if you take a deep breath in and then hold your breath, you will not do any harm to yourself because your body already has so much oxygen in the bloodline, you'll notice that it feels like you don't even need to breathe. And as you're holding your breath, that's when you start to feel the sensations. This sensation, when it first starts to occur, it feels like you're going to pass out. If you cannot get beyond that, this is what you're working on getting beyond. Because you've oxygenated your body so much, if you go to start holding your breath, it's different than when you just try to hold your breath right now. If you try to hold your breath right now, your lungs have enough strength to basically make you, take that next breath. You don't have enough strength to go out of consciousness because you held your breath. But if you oxygenate your body with alkaline inside of it, it puts you into like a woozy, altered state anyway. And so when you're in the master's pose and you're completely comfortable that you're not going to get hurt and you have your knees touching the ground and your back is straight, the Kundalini moves. You actually feel it starting to get hot in the bottom of the back. Now, many people have done the Kundalini exercises before, but this training that we're going to go through now is totally different. Like this training that we're going through in the next few weeks is like Sevan's Kundalini course, I guess we can call it. Because what I'm going to do is I'm not just going to I'm not just going to have the techniques. I'm going to have all the information that accompanies what it exactly is there through those states of consciousness before you connect with your total self, your complete you working in unison. Also, I did want to let everyone know there's about 22 minutes left in the call that they can actually call in. That number is area code 347-996-5688. You can call in, or for callers that are on the line, if you press 1, I can actually see the indicator and lets me know that you have a question. The other thing about this type of information, man, is just like with everything else, is that you have to ask the question to sometimes get the answer. In my life, it's been one of those things where I have so much information and I have so much capability, but it means nothing when I cannot translate that information to the right individuals or in the way in which they can understand it. So sometimes I think that I've done a good enough job at explaining something, and maybe I've done a horrible job. But the big thing that people need to get here is that this is your life. This is your soul we're talking about here. This is something that no one can figure out for you anyway. And if you want to know what really happened in our world and where our abilities are and why we're in this state, I'm here to tell you right now, do not think that you're in the same state that you were in when you were completely whole and collected. No, you're now in the pentagram. And I'll also explain what happened after the last war, because it talks about this war in the Necronomicon, but again, no one has to read this. It talks about the war between the ancient ones and the elder gods. And you can already see that the other one of them are the really, really old ones, and the other ones are still old to us. And after that war, there was a splitting. That everything was connected until that war. So people want to say, well, where is the big dissension at? It was because there was a separation between basically the great-great-great-grandfathers and their great-great-great-great-grandfathers and mothers. Those beings had a separation amongst themselves. And I highly believe that the reason for our reality, Earth, is to become the bridge for those conflicts, to where those conflicts subside within us. Because it's playing out now. They also talk about, again, we talked about earlier about how the gods are forgetful. How does this happen? This happens because it only takes 2 generations, 3 generations at the most to erase a person's entire culture. So at that point, they can't remember anything because there's nothing for them to remember. All of who they were, they have no connection to. And this is not a good thing, people. Like, regardless of what is back there, it makes us stronger and want to do better. It would not make us so ashamed of ourselves that we would do nothing. In fact, obviously, that's what not having the knowledge is doing. It's making us ashamed of who we are and not being able to do anything and not having power. And it's because all of these things that have been going on within the religious circles and within the confusion of mankind have been going on in the cycle in which we just walked into. But that doesn't mean that we have to do the same thing that they're doing. Like, oftentimes I sit in the room and I say, man, we have to be willing to create something new. We always have to be willing, even for ourselves. We cannot get trapped into everyone else's idea of what we should be doing and everyone else's fears about things. And that's why I started to discover there's wholeness, and then there's those outside of wholeness. Those who are still yet to figure out that wholeness really exists. And when you can start doing that, then you have access to these other planes. You, right now, obviously have been doing something exceptional because you're on the line right now getting information that is only getting to a certain group of people right now. And the reality becomes for us to understand what that really means. Who are you? Not so much as me, because I'm the one with having to just give the information. The one receiving it is the one getting the gift. Surely the one that is receiving it is the one getting the gift. So this means that you've done something that warrants you having the ability to understand what goes on next and not getting trapped into the new world's strangulation methods of keeping people more hindered because they have too many people on their hands and still can't reveal to them the truth yet, as they continue to want to play out being the leaders and the gods, etc., when that's something we all are. So if we're all not participating in it, then nothing good could ever come out of it. And that's just how it works. So I see no people that have their hands up here. I'm going to check the chat box for just a moment to see let me see here. I'm just looking through the questions real quick here. We're going to take a brief break, and then I'm going to go ahead and come back with forward, as I always say, with the rest of this message, because I have a couple things that I want to talk about in regards to Japan and what I've discovered was going on there. And I also wanted to talk about next show and just a couple other things that I've discovered this week on this miraculous adventure. And I'm going to definitely be putting out some more books. I have some books that I want to pass to everyone so that you have the information about this. I've just been compiling some things and getting the 100% truth on what's going on. I've been really working on the geometry of it, because there are codes in there, there's languages in there, and there's doors in there. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with here. When you get out of the body, there's gates and there's doors. And just like with, if you just popped up in Iraq all of a sudden, what do you think would happen? I guess it would depend on where you popped up. But if you started to cross into like some building and they say, well, who are you? Where's your identification? You see how there's more to be known about what happens when you come out of the body. So we're going to talk about, when we come back, identifications. How to keep yourself into that correct state of mind while you're experiencing yourself. And I want to thank everyone for calling in, and we're going to be back here in about 5 minutes. Okay, we are forward, and this is always my favorite part of the show, the last part of the show, because it always ends up speeding up, and then we end up finishing the show late, but we're going to do our best to finish the show in 11 minutes. We have one caller on the line. Before we answer that call, I found it pertinent to just talk about this one basic thing about Universe B, because as we see, there's obviously a meetup that's about to happen, that there's some type of lineup, some type of what they call the twin flame, sometimes the galactic lineup, et cetera, et cetera. What does it all really mean? What's about to happen? Well, it's something that has always been happening, but for a certain group of people that possess a certain kind of knowledge. And this is what I'm talking about is how to unite with your other half. And what is your other half like? Because remember, most of the work that we've been doing in the resistance is to get you familiar with yourself, to understand that there's everything that is negative is going on inside. And when negativity is removed, it then makes the being balanced, and then they can receive this information. Once they receive the information, then that information is of the nature of how to get them completely whole again. Once that takes place for an individual, then they'll understand exactly what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about is what Hollywood has been doing, and what the ones who have this knowledge has been doing, is they've been bringing the person's double from Venus or whatever planet they correspond to, I'm assuming, and then they infuse it into the person. And then the person then knows who they completely are, and thus they can act out that they're in this high state of consciousness, or what they call aristocracy, this higher elated elite state. Okay? This is not a pro-Illuminati speech. This is simple terminology of when a person is in a higher state of consciousness versus one is in the cheeseburger state of consciousness. So we'll talk about it like that. And it's unfortunate now these days that even the knowledge of how to get to a higher state of consciousness has been so demonized that when you start to talk about the methods and procedures, it's automatically tied into the Illuminati and the Masons. And then this makes the whole lot, just like everything else, the person just discards all the knowledge. But if you go back into the ancient cultures, especially those that existed within the Mayan culture, and definitely those that existed within Ethiopia, we find the entire culture was symbolized around the Venusian religion and culture. And even their Jesus comes right out of the Vesica from the Venusian culture. So we can easily look at it and say, well, that's what the problem with everything is. And then we just sit here. Just like that's what the problem with everything is. It's the Venusians. But what it becomes is, can we go the step further and say, so what is the plan anyway? What was the goal? What was the whole thing? I believe the thing was to make a more advanced race. That's what the Atlanteans were attempting to do. And then they discovered what the Lemurians told them. which is if you speed something up faster than it's supposed to be sped up, you'll mess it up. And so thus they disconnected from each other at that point. And those Lemurians were originally living in the area that we're calling Japan. And they were definitely something of the color of a naga. And what ended up happening with the karma of Japan, and it's very interesting to really, really watch what goes on in the world and to get negation and then understand what's happening. If you notice that Japan's number one technique is the kamikaze because of their honor. And we understand that many of the things that have to do with honor come from Japan. So we can say Japanese are very honorable people. But where does that come from? And what happened to them, and I'll just get to the end of this, what happened to them is when they discovered, after those bombs were dropped, that their genes, their DNA were messed up. And when their kids were coming out and their genes were messed up, such honorable people, they made sure that the world would see their pain. And their pain is what we're actually experiencing now because that radiation is now everywhere. So it's like a dimensional kamikaze. Like I talk to people all the time, and this is today the urgency. I talk to people all the time, and they tell me how things are coming unhinged where they are. They come to me and they ask me, well, what should we do? To me, I'm the type of individual, I base everything that I do off of what I'm experiencing. Now, I don't hold to any type of integer from the past, especially if I don't even have all the story. How should I be trusting anything someone is saying when we don't even know where we are? They're telling us, oh, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, and oh, you're a computer programmer, you like this, you like that. Hello, excuse me, where are we? Could I get that information first? Because everything you're telling me after that, I have to even know if I'm going to really even be able to use it as truth or not, because I don't even know where I am. That's how you should start looking at some of the information that these people are giving you in this reality. And you have to start being brave, because when you be brave, you'll find the truth. It's here. But it's not what they make it. Like, they made truth other things. That's what they say. Even when they're telling a lie, they're telling the truth. It's right, because they can shape and fashion a lie and a truth. But what is beyond all of that? What is beyond the ego? What's actually beyond there is everything. And to become everything, I say we walk with a clear face. You don't have any program loaded. This is the only way to come out of the body and not immediately slam back in your body because of what you just seen. When you are really balanced, because now, see this reality that they say you're projecting? Like they always say, well, you're projecting this reality. No. There's a lot of external influences that are helping you project this reality. Let's put it like that. But in the other one, on the other side, you project everything that's there. So when it's time for you to meet yourself, if yourself is a monster, you see what happened with those individuals who got into the knowledge and they weren't balanced before they went in there. All they did was they met themselves, but they were monsters. And then they brought it back here. Many of the Venusians have done this. The ones that have the knowledge, they go to Venus because they know that that's obviously like our hive mind womb. The same thing that you see when you're on DMT. You see some type of, they would call it, it's like a mother brain. It's not just a human, and it's not just an insect. It's not just a bird. It has all of the characteristics of the entire planet, all rolled into one, pumping through tentacles. I believe that is on Venus, and that it sends all of the nuclei or the actual fluid, maybe even through light. It sends all of that here, or it sent all that here at a certain point, or continuous stream, and it gives us the fruit. It gives us the people. It gives us all this stuff. And the reason why all the ancients, everyone that I've ever researched, always keeps leading back to Venus is because they understand that it was the Funkadeti component of everything that's here. And it deserves investigating, not worshiping. It's literally like whatever is out there, if it has some truth to it, find that, because you'll find yourself if you're truth. If you're a phony, if you're a fake, then you won't find anything. You'll be saying the same thing over and over and over again, and it'll basically, you'll see, even for yourself, how it'll go nowhere. But I tell you the truth, there's knowledge here that could get us somewhere, and it all connects. And my optimism for this whole reality is I know still one thing, because it's something I experienced 4 years ago, that we have the ability. Some people ask me all the time, well, what is the name? What is the Tony? It was simply me saying the same thing over and over and over and over again for 3 hours with the intent of making a connection. That the energy that began to course through my body, that when another individual touched me, it did it to them too. It changed them to be better people. And I'm sure if there was 100 people in that room that day, it would have all spread to them too. So I know that this reality can go into a high vibration all at one moment, the moment that some people start to activate and stay activated. That's the other thing. Not just activate, but stay activated. And the only way we're going to do that is we're going to do that together. And some of us have this ability to go into this kind of stuff and make heads or tails of it. Like, you can imagine what's going on in my mind, but it's all still self-contained. Like, people call me, they understand I'm the easiest person to deal with. I answer all my emails still. It's like 50 emails a day. I still answer all my emails because I'm still here. It didn't take my mind and demon run all the wall. That's not what it did. It just let me understand more about what the hell is going on here. And I've played that role for a long time, but just observing. Just an observer. But now, lately, I've been making moves. I'm not just observing and watching humanity get crumbled because if you forget your past, you become extinct. I've watched many animals become extinct, even during my lifetime. They're not here anymore. So I don't think that humanity would let itself become extinct, but that's because I'm here. That's how I think. And I think that people should start thinking the same way, is that you wouldn't become extinct because you're here, and you're not going to let it happen. Do not let the knowledge get lost, because how gods forget is when their children come out and they don't know anything about this. They have no culture. Someone gives them a new culture. So thus, because the culture is not the culture of the ancient, they can't contact the ancient. Then who are they left with then? Who do you ever have but your own family? And that's why people need to stand. Because we're all family, you have me, no matter what your color is, you have me as a brother there for you. All right, so we got 90 seconds in the call. We have one caller. We're going to go ahead and take that call, and then we're going to run just a little bit over, just about 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in the show today. And so we're going to take that caller. You're calling from a 415 area code. Actually, caller, we're going to take just a moment to take your call. We're going to let this thing count down. That way it doesn't count down while you're on the line. But this is definitely a good time to be in. And I know, like, a lot of times, I think through all of my recordings on Blog Talk Radio, except for last week's show, I could always say that I've been in the position personally to not be able to say everything just in being concerned about what people would really think. But it's not time for that anymore, because you guys have to know everything that I know, just as my contribution to you, so you'll understand what's really taking place here on planet Earth. It's like, that's the fulfillment of my promise to you. And so that's what keeps me not holding back on what I explain. But the main thing is it's up to you. It's about how you are inside, your core. And if you know your core is good, you have nothing to fear. But if you know your core has something twisted with it, then seek assistance to get that off of you, because that is not you. And so that's a very clear thing to say. Like, if you know you have some weird inclination inside that is very wicked, not this regular frolicking stuff that the Venusians and the humans are doing, not the organic nature, orgasmic nature between everything. That's why they attempted to demonize that type of relationship or sexual relationship so much, because the sexual relationship is always taking place with us in the reality. So it becomes for us that we just get ourselves in control and be able to get ourselves out of this pentagram, break this shell. Look, I'll show you how it's a shell. I just actually broke into something. Okay, if you look at pi, when they start to spin it and spiral it, it looks like a shell. That shell is actually the formulation of the pentagram itself. They connect this perfectly for us, people. And then it becomes us. We become like shellfish, or I say like selfish, until we break it. And that is the seed-like nature with us. Like we have so much inside of us, we would have to understand just by that alone where we came from. That's what it becomes to identify with. It doesn't even become anymore to identify with a certain group of people or a certain color people or whatever. It becomes a look inside of them. Look at their ventricles. Do they bleed the same? That's what I'm saying. My blood is still the same color as your blood. So there's nothing else really beyond that. What is deeper than blood? So we'll take the caller, area code 415. You're on the Universal Current.
Hi, how are you, Sevan? Oh, good. My name is Sunny. I sent you an email about the JCN and which is the Jesus Christ numerology thing. My question to you about outer body is about binaural tones and the use of them. I find them very useful myself. Do you recommend them for your listeners and for people?
For sure, especially I believe it's the first CD pack of Dr. Monroe's hemisynchronization. For those who know the whole body breathing techniques and the have the hemisynchronization, that is an even more effective key. Like I did leave it kind of bare bones as far as the techniques to use, but you can actually get that off of a torrent now for free. And if you notice that Dr. Monroe, in his procedure of coming out of the body while playing the binaural, actually says you're coming out of the zero. So he actually identifies that. He's like, there's a 10, you're in the 10, the 1 and the 0. And it's very interesting to see just that these people, especially Dr. Enroll, knew 100% what we were experiencing in this reality. So I definitely would accompany those binaural beats if you have them, but mainly that first CD, it kind of started spanning out. Dr. Monroe died, and then I believe his son took over things, and I think things got a little weird in there. So I would just go with the first CDs, because the other ones are like walking down the, different kind of passageways that I just kept falling asleep on. Like I'm not into this. But the first ones were definitely something going on there, because it just taught the basic procedure.
That's very cool. I'll check them out.
No doubt.
Thank you. And everything that you said totally is backed up. I mean, I've had the same experiences, and these are a lot of really helpful, useful tips for getting out of the body, because it's sometimes not as easy as other times.
Yeah, the master's pose, it actually goes, I didn't actually finish explaining it earlier, but we're going to get into it more the next show, but it goes in waves. Like the person will probably hang in for one wave, because once they pass out, like I didn't kind of explain what happens after, but I can explain what happens after. Because they're like, well, you can't explain there's nothing that happened as if it didn't happen to you. I've definitely been a few places, but what happens in the master's pose is you pass out, and then all of a sudden, the first times something happened. You come back, as a spiritually conscious individual, you just went somewhere like a dream. It seems like you had a longer dream, and then you have some information. But that's what I call like the first level. The person has it, they feel tired, but they also feel like they're buzzing. And this is the frequency change of the first time, like I call it, like cranking this ship, cranking up the engine. And so,
the humming, you mean?
Say that again?
Like, you mean the humming, like the buzzing noise?
Yeah, well, it's definitely sometimes audible, but this is more like within the hands and within the base of the back. There's like a buzzing feeling. Okay. But the person tends to feel tired. That's why I'm glad we got into this part of the conversation, because don't be discouraged if you actually feel tired. Some people just go and lay down and they go to sleep very well, but the next stage is to kind of shake out of it and to go again. What eventually happens is that when you're in that space, when you pass out, you actually realize that you're passed out, because now you kind of went a little further in your consciousness that you're actually passed out. And then you can tug your spirit out. But then that's, again, where the depth level of things come in at, because what most people immediately face when they do that is someone yelling at them, telling them to get back in their body. And that generally jars them, and they go right back into their body, and then that's the last time they ever go. And then and there's processions of that. So there's there's definitely some stuff, and that's what we want to do, is to be able to walk through some of this stuff, like step by step of what is experiencing there, so we eventually make contact. That's also what we have the ability to do. It's still the first time something like this will ever be developed. But just having a group or online group that's astral also, and would just be, it'd be phenomenal, to say the least.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Especially if things can definitely remain cohesive. And I think that's why we started the way we started, because there's a lot of information that we presented before. It kind of wiped the slate clean on a lot of stuff so that we can investigate things very clearly and very mature. And then we've come up with some stuff that's just undeniable. And then we find basically just a story of ourselves. And so I definitely wanted to thank you for calling in. Do you have any more questions, sister?
I didn't actually have a question. I'll make it super brief. One of my travels, I wound up in a bathroom, and there was like a sock puppet with one eye. The other one was red, which sort of goes to the symbolism of, the one-eyed Dajjal or whatever. And it said, you live inside my body and you're stuck in my throat chakra, which I thought was really interesting because, you talk about birth and being external and how it was never meant to be external, it was supposed to be internal. And the whole birth is almost an egg or a womb, if you will. So it was interesting, and I wasn't, and it was just trippy, and it sort of backs up everything you said too. So
yeah, I mean, there's like multiple wombs. I don't think we've ever seen anything kind of like this before. But it's multiple wombs, yeah. and those wombs actually are the gates. Like they were basically attempting to explain to everyone through these ancient books that it was completely organic. It wasn't like kind of how they depicted on the comic book, where they got the thing, they powered it up, they got the machines out there. That the womb was something entirely different. And so I believe 100% that there would be a developed fear anyway from external people or externalized people of such things. And that's who we've just had interpreting that knowledge to us, is individuals such as the Theosophical Society who call themselves the beast. That's the actual terminology used for the most material person. So when you have the most material people explaining the deeper esoteric ethereal knowledge, then you're not going to get that. And so thus every time, and that's what people should understand with knowledge and with truth. It's universal. So but it's still universal means it gets used the way the person actually that starts to behold it. It's like we actually are the capacitors for acting out much of this universal energy. And that's what they say. Exploring the ancient knowledge is simply ancient nanotechnology. It's discovering where the hidden small energies really are. And then in that we discover ourselves also. And I don't see that being a bad bargain as long as, we can keep progressing.
I agree. I agree. I also think how technology is part of the biggest problem that we have. I think it's sort of like a cancer in a sense for the earth and for ourselves, and that because it's inorganic. So maybe that was the other thing that I found in my travels.
Yeah, I mean, we can see now, like I talked about earlier in the show, I mean, now we're experiencing the drawback of our relationship with the machines and with technology. However, at any stage, they could have chose to take these machines and made them do the work while we learned. I think the advanced consciousness still means like whatever state that you're actually in, you pull yourself from there. I think it's many people right now that really want to just leave this situation. They're just like, you know what, I forget Earth, it's not going to turn itself around. And there's many of that's why I was remarking on the show that many of the people that actually know about this knowledge that I'm talking about and are not bad people they've already given up on actually giving that knowledge just out on a public level to see if it will actually transform humanity. But the reality is, I mean, I see it as our responsibility because many of those people are really old. So they were born in the Piscean era. So just kind of by right, they should not be saying anything. It's almost like if you have someone who's sworn their whole life to secrecy, why would you want to make them break their secret oath at the end of their life so that they have that on their consciousness when they pass on? Like, I did break the oath, though. You see, so it's almost like we are born as in our age now, not under any of these obligations as our ancestors were. And that just becomes how society continues to free itself up. It's really a beautiful thing because still something new is always created. Even though we may say, okay, we come from the ancestors, the emanations from the ancestors are splendid. It's not ever going to end. So that means it gives us something to actually, anything that we think can be really accomplished. It's just about the people who can know that and then take that power. Because that's the thing. It's almost like the motivation. The motivation is
it's all about focusing on the beauty and focusing on the splendidness of it all. I think is so important, and being grateful for the chance to do it.
Yeah. And then be able to absorb that. Like, I think we do move fast. And even sometimes when we're doing something good, we don't take enough time with it sometimes to absorb all of what it's actually doing. And because it's almost like a reflection. That's what they would tend to call it, is like reflecting on it. But I know one thing, though. I'm excited. I'm definitely excited about what's supposed to take place here in the future and also what's going on now. I definitely know regardless if a person understands the techniques or can do them, it's going to happen for them anyway somewhere around 2012. What the 0 point is really about is that as I'm getting finished with more of this knowledge, when the phi turns itself in the other direction and then starts to go back towards the center of that spiral, that center of that spiral is 0 point. So instead of it going in the one direction, which produces more life, it produces more abundance. If it's ever turned in the opposite direction, it's actually speeding towards it meeting with itself, basically. And so that's actually sometimes a person says, well, why did we choose to take our consciousness back in the opposite direction? Because that's clearly what happened. I'm sure someone that was real smart said, hey, guys, I think if we go back down conscious levels, we can grasp more of this. Because remember,
it's like the whole idea of going time or something.
Well, yeah, because the whole idea of going fast into something, which was the idea of the Atlanteans, and if we know these A people have definitely been here civilizing things, that it didn't have an ultimate effect as they expected on society. They expected it all to be like the Jetsons, basically, but times 10. And what it ended up in was a bunch of conflicts because the moment that too much power was introduced to a singular group of people, at one move you could decimate a whole group of people. And if you still have the lion or snake nature inside anyway, there's always the king of the jungle type attitude anyway. So it was too much energy. That's what was discovered. That's why I believe the human being was put in the situation to understand more of what they actually are. It's like, wait a minute, you guys are everything, but you're just doing too much. You pin them down. And that's when the pentagrams and that's when the mother and all these other beings came involved, because it's somewhat like a rehabilitation for humanity. And then in the meantime, it continues to run because it still has a hard time rehabilitating a person. Like it's almost like a work in progress because there's so many kind of different people. And that's what I would really say about the burden sometimes of having to run a whole society. When you think it's a good idea to jump up there at first and say, well, I'm your king, and then end up like many of the kings and men of the old times having every single day to do something with the people. And answer the people's every move, almost to the point where it cripples them to not think for themselves. And so that's what, it's almost like something that's tested first, like we're going to give them an archetype, And then they say, well, you know what, the archetypes don't work very well because the person doesn't think for themselves. But they learn something, and then they get them set up for the next stage. So I see all of this as stages, just like we see life as stages. We see the insects, we see the trees, then we see the graduation. The question to us becomes, are we going forward or backwards? Or left and right? Like sometimes someone always says, well, it's either ascension or descension. Well, what happened to left and right? Well, how did that get out of there? So this is the thing that I really want people to start to understand. And the main thing about it is the currency. That's really what this show is definitely about. But having the understanding about what's going on with your field, where exactly it's unbalanced, correcting that balance, getting more truth will speed the person up because they'll know who they are, and then they can remain grounded because they know their roots, they know where they came from, they know what they need to improve. All of those animalistic type, negative side of the animalistic trait is what our test is. And that's why we were put inside of the flesh, because the flesh acts that out on an external level. And so it just becomes very interesting to be a part of. We see more of the worth of what is being put into play here versus, oh, they ruined it. Like when you have the, oh, they ruined it attitude every day, it doesn't do much for the energy. It's the glass half empty. You're just waiting on the big meltdown. But the reality is that that's not really what's happening. What's actually happening is reality. Everyone is now being forced to become real, and now we're going to start dealing with real people. Great. I was hoping that everyone would start getting real, because the fake people were the dreaming ones. It's almost like you're talking to them, but they're not really listening, and you can always tell when a person's not paying attention to you, and they're like, That's what we kind of been living in that state in this reality, and now we get this huge opportunity to be fully awake again. Because I know what happened before, because this is one of the main things I wanted to point out. What those people in Hollywood, like Johnny Depp, those kind of individuals have done is they used the knowledge because they did have the knowledge, and they bought their other half over. And then now what I'm noticing on Coast to Coast AM and many of these different radio stations that I can tell are somehow affiliated with the not so bright side of things, that they're taking all these guys who know about this kind of knowledge, but just from only the dark magic level. And then they're getting them to tell people, you can get demons to bring things over for you and to do things for you, and this is how you do it. And then they give them the same knowledge that is the actual knowledge of how to open a gate. But the reality becomes when this individual that's teaching these people is already looking like he's just killed something and he's looking like a vampire, the people who are learning that knowledge have to feel like they have to look like that too before they can achieve it. And then the books they read further encourage them that there's some ghastly character and demon thing on this other side. So the person is basically already set up to when they open the door, something, a monster is going to come across. So you see how that works? And it's like, and then why they keep increasing, obviously what I discovered is that they are increasing an army of negative people. It's not an army of demons from the other dimension. No, what it is negative people that are here with us, and they're not getting any assistance, not getting any truth, not getting any guidance, and then they fall into the magic. They open the door and they collect themselves here. And then they become controlled by the ones who are still up there and now using the R or aristocracy to actually control humanity. And the ones who could really control it are asleep. Or as they say, they're the ancestors. They're very clear to say the ancient ones are dead, but dreaming. And so it says right there, whatever they did to the ancestors, they killed them as far as what we would call life, which means we don't have any contact. But they're dreaming also. So that sounds like our world. As gods, we are like in this world, and it's kind of like dead. There's no purpose at times if you don't make one. And there's all this stuff we could be doing, but we're not doing it. But at the same time, there's this dream that things could get better and how things could work. Like every day, really intelligent people and just spiritual people, connected people just think of all these ideas of how things could get better. And that's called dreaming. There's nothing negative about that. But when we use time for in action, that's where we get lost, because our power to put it in action is just like the rib that was removed from Adam. We have to do all these other things, i.e. the gates of the chakras, going through the gates, in order to get ourselves back in the state to be able to charge through downtown and be like, hey, you have to know this. Here's a CD. You went to Kinko's and printed out 1,000 different flyers, very simple, telling people what's going on, and you're sitting at the conference when they're talking to the president, and you're yelling, hey, it's all a conspiracy, and they're dragging you out. People now have been somewhat pacified to behaving like that, but they're never realizing that that will give them life. But it doesn't mean to go and occupy everything. It means organize. But from a spiritual level, like while we're occupying, I said they're occupying Wall Street, we need to go occupy the local cassia tree. We need to go occupy the chiripo they have over here with the extraterrestrials that keep landing on top of it, and it's really going on. We need to go occupy Titicaca to see if we can tap in to see what happened. That's the kind of occupying that needs to go on. And when humanity does that, and they will see is quick to respond. Because who's responding? Themselves? Once they start to respond,
I think that it's like it can be an external journey, but it has to start inside, and that's the easiest step anybody could take, is just go inside, like you said, face yourself, and then forgive yourself. Once you forgive yourself, then forgiving everybody else is easy, and then it's easy to love everybody else once you actually love yourself. And I think that is the hardest part of it, and it is an internal journey, and it is the most crucial step.
I mean, for sure. And we have to definitely get prepared to move like we really are. When we move in truth, there's an ebb and a flow to our life, and just like our heart beats in and out. And it's just really about us being able to go internal, because we have to move. I see people also have to move on. They are still, a lot are waiting to connect with themselves, but there's also a mission after that. It's like, once you're collected, there's like, okay, come back out, because there's other people that need you. Like, we're looking at really what's just happening to the children. And this is something that I wanted to bring up just very briefly. Actually, Mr. Spirit Matter, or Pablo, got a chance yesterday to spend some time with some kids that were orphaned. And even up to the smallest kid was like 2 months. How do you look at, like some of us that have parents, how would we look at that kid's life when he grows up and says, well, where's my mother? So that is the thing that we actually have to know is the same thing that we experience. We have to connect it to when we say, well, where is our mother? Like, where is our connection with the mother that we know that would have took care of us and it would have our highest level of potential? And then that's when we can start to connect with that, because that is available. But I guess as the more we get into identifying where things came from, the easier it's going to be for people to return to who they really are. And so then like I said, there's so much to still be delivered here, and just to soothe a lot of the stuff that's been going on, if this ends in the way that we really, really want it to, which is in the higher level of the activation, and we all transcend into that next dimension, and then the next one begins, we come in as, once again, a whole society, but ready to use our intellect and our balance in order to continue to generate. So our consciousness, people should understand, our consciousness never stops. And so they can already start making higher level plans into the future. And I guess that'll be later shows when we start talking about what to make plans for and what really not to. Because sometimes the mind sets something out in the future that ends up hindering it, while sometimes it can send something out there that really, really manifests a large level of energy for the being.
Very cool. I'm excited about doing the pose. I'm going to as soon as we hang up.
Okay, yeah, I guess we did kind of go on there. So I definitely want to thank everyone for calling in to the Universal Current. I just wanted to let all the callers know that did call in, if you can actually press 1 or star or whatever it is when you hang up through that advertisement, it actually allows this show to rank a little bit higher, and that way more people can get the recording. I also did want to say thank you to all of our supporters on the Resistance. I mean, just a phenomenal crew, all the people who share so much information and get so connected with others. And there's people coming in all the time that don't know much about this, and they're really fast and equipped to assist, and that's just phenomenal just to be a part of something of this nature. I want to let everyone know I'm just definitely going to keep bringing it. I'm running into a lot of the information, and a lot of things are syncing up even from the code and the language level. So we definitely have more to continue to go into as far as this whole quest that we're actually on together, this journey. And just everyone to remember just that one thing, that no matter what happens, we'll be together. And there's some of us here already that are more than equipped to deal with any situation. And once again, I want to say wholeness and balance. Thank you again for calling in, Sunny.
Oh, thanks for everything. I didn't touch on that chat, but no, thanks for everything. You are brilliant.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, we got
Take
also. I also want to send a shout out to Luis, who's now back in Miami. I know he's probably listening on the line. I just wanted to say, just a phenomenal person. For those who can connect with Ho more, I mean, he's just got a lot to give and a lot of essence to give. There's a lot of transformation definitely taking place with the resistance. Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone.